So, Asha, is JD Vance weird?
That's not complicated. I'm Asha Rangappa. I teach national security law at Yale University. I'm a former FBI special agent, and I'm a legal contributor for ABC News.
And I'm Renato Mariotti. I'm a former federal prosecutor, a practicing lawyer, and a legal analyst.
And we're here to help you understand topics that can't be boiled down into a soundbite or a tweet. So, Renato, I think we need to give a caveat at the beginning of this because we're not really helping people understand things that can't be boiled down to a soundbite or a tweet because it can be boiled down to weird.
Yeah, we're going to have fun just once. This is not going to be the whole podcast, we promise. Like, this is not going to turn into like the Gabbing About Politics podcast. But this is like Bizarro Upside Down world here, and it's complicated because it's sort of simple, and we're just going to just have fun for an episode.
Let's do it.
So maybe let's talk about weirdness.
Weird.
That seems like the word of the day, right? Is weird.
Well, and it happens so organically. And the thing is, like, when you see it, you're like, it is super weird. Like that has been our life since 2016. It's been weird.
Yes. And I just will say, to try to provide some substance around this, why I think it's so much better as messaging.
Yeah.
As somebody who tries to convince people of things for a living. Like, one of the things that has actually had a huge impact on me, Asha, when I was developing as a lawyer, is reading the book Thinking Fast and Slow. Have you ever read that book?
Mm-hmm.
Where they talk about how the behavioral economists, Nobel Prize winners, who write this book about how the human brain works and how there's like system 1 and system 2. And system 1 is automated, like you're brushing your teeth, you're driving, like you don't think about it, you just do it. And we also have biases, by the way, that we just think about, wow, that person's attractive. I guess I will more likely vote them not guilty or whatever, or I'll hire that person, something like that, or racial bias or other things. And then system 2 is where you're like doing calculus and where you're really actively using the reasoning part of your brain. And like people are usually in system 1. They're just automatically processing stuff. They're scrolling on their phones. They're doing whatever. And the most convincing arguments are when you're appealing to people's gut, when you're appealing to their system 1, where they don't have to like sit and think and reason, where it just appeals to them. And the thing about the weird argument is it's really freaking simple. And like everyone gets it. Yeah, these people are kind of freaking weird. They're not like normal. They're not us. They're kind of off. Like it just makes perfect sense in your gut. It's not like democracy.
It doesn't feel right.
Right?
Yeah, it's not I think what the Democrats have been messaging for a long time, which is, we passed an infrastructure bill, which is great. Like it's true. It's true. And I'm not here to denigrate that because that's amazing. But actually, at the end of the day, as you said, like people are looking for things that hit them emotionally and at a visceral level. And I mean, for better or worse, that's really what drives our political scene, right? So infrastructure bill is not it. And then I think there was this idea of making this a choice between autocracy and democracy. And I mean, look, that resonates with me. It probably resonates with a lot of people listening to this podcast. But, maybe to your average Gen Z voter, it doesn't. Or somebody who's not super politically engaged or someone who thinks that that's hyperbole. And so you're right. Nobody wants to vote for people who are weird.
Yeah. You don't want to vote for a weirdo. You don't want to have a weirdo as president. I think the thing with the democracy point, it's 100% right. Okay. This man is a threat. Trump is a threat to our democracy, but it's very intellectual. It's a cerebral argument. Mm-hmm. It's ephemeral. It's like when you have Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the base level is like food and water and things like that. And then the high level is like self-actualization. It's like, right. This is complicated.
This is like, you need people who have sat and gotten enlightenment before they can like really understand
it's too much of this reasoning side of the brain.
Yeah.
Think about these high level concepts. And it's like, that's not what most people are focused on. Like most people are focused on like feeding their families and going to work and, all the stuff that they have to do. And this is just like, yeah, this guy's a weirdo. And the irony is that's the same level of gut BS that he uses on his side. These people are not us.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's essentially what this message says. He's not us. And it's actually brilliant in that way.
Like, I do also think it's co-opted this idea of it leaves the definition to the person. Like, there's no, like, I think us versus them framing can be usually very dangerous, right? Because often the us versus them targets a specific group that can be identified in some very clear way. What the weird thing does is sort of become this catch-all, mean anything term. The way that Republicans, I think, have quite skillfully deployed things like CRT or DEI. You know what I mean? Like, I think those are a little bit more narrow. We know who they're talking about there. But if you were to say, what exactly do you mean? It's sort of like loosey-goosey, and a lot of things get swept under it. And because it's really allowing the person utilizing the term or kind of viewing it through that lens to basically put their own, interpretation on it. And I think that's what weird does.
It does. And that's, by the way, a big part of persuasion as well. Like, if I'm trying to persuade a jury of something, you want them to all actually be making a leap with you. Like, they're kind of meeting you halfway. You're presenting something to them, and they're inserting their own gut biases, prejudices, whatever, into whatever you're trying to sell them. Government's theory doesn't add up. Well, I didn't say how. It's just it's a vague concept. And really, you were mentioning some examples of what the Republicans do. Perhaps, in my view, one of the better ones is make America great again. What does that mean? It means whatever you want it to mean. Mm-hmm. And it essentially means that you thought that America X number of years ago, undefined when that was better than it is today. Was that 8 years ago or 6 years ago when maybe you had a job at your steel mill? Maybe. Is it 30 years ago when certain groups of people, or 80 years ago when certain groups of people couldn't vote? Or when our society is more segregated? Okay. Like, my point is, it allows people to insert whatever their biases are into that. This, in a certain way, does the same thing, and obviously a less sinister way.
Yeah. And I think it's also a really smart term to latch on to, because it resonates with people from all different backgrounds, especially younger people, right? It's memeable. Yeah. And it's sort of the gift that keeps on, like, it's just the perfect adjective, because, I mean, honestly, it's true. Like, when you have Stephen Miller going on Fox to explain why Republicans aren't weird, you know what I mean?
It's a little weird.
It's a little weird.
Yeah, here's a question. Is Trump going to be able to get through an entire debate without seeming weird? I mean, that's an interesting
one. And they've made it stick. And they made it, I think it's starting to stick. Like, in a way that the Biden is old thing was sticking, and, Hillary came in, I think, to the 2016 election with so much history that I think it was very easy to label her, because as first lady, I mean, it was just, there's so much that, it's very easy to make it stick. And I think it's helped by the fact that they cannot seem to get something to stick to Kamala. I saw a clip today where Trump tried to say she's old. She's 59.
I thought that was odd. That was an odd one.
It was so weird.
I mean, look, they're going to come up with things to say about Harris. I mean, obviously she's liberal. She's a woman. She's a person of color. They're going to find things to say about her. But I think, one thing that's always to your advantage, particularly when you're running behind on something, is to change the playbook. And This has really forced the Republicans to be agile. And I think it's fair to say that they're having trouble with that right now, because they had planned for one thing. I do that in trials all the time. It's like the government has a certain plan. Okay, we're going to have a totally different plan, because we're playing on their playbook. We're going to lose. Right. So we got to come up with something new.
I also think that the DEI thing is backfiring. Because what they, I mean, yeah, the label or the accusation, whatever it is that they put on Kamala Harris, because again, it doesn't work. Like, so I mean, let's be honest. Like, the implication here is that she's not qualified. She's running against Trump. I'm sorry, it's dumb. It's just, dumb is not as catchy as weird, but it's dumb.
I feel like stuff like DEI appeals to people who are already inclined to have that point of view. It's itself like
people who are racist,
right? People who already are going to have some level of bias because she's a woman or because she's a person of color or whatever. Because from my perspective, it's another complicated one. What does even DEI stand for, and what does it mean? Like, there's just a lot to unpack there. And so, like, even if you're trying to make some argument about it, it's not like apparent on face value. Whereas, like, everyone knows what it means to be weird. But
it also is just, I mean, it just backfires. Did you see the sermon that some pastor was giving in a church, in a black church, where he talked about DEI, and he's like, like, basically, like, we're going to step up and have the sisters back. And like, and he just starts listing off her qualifications and comparing them to Trump. And, like that, I think I will say for people of color who've had like this DEI thing leveled at them, I get all the time at Twitter. Like, I will say something that, talks about the FBI or something like that. And there'll be like, people will be like, oh, shut up. You were just a DEI hire.
Seriously?
Which, I mean, frankly, like, oh yeah, it's all the time. Which,
wow.
By the way, I tweeted this. I mean, it's true in the sense that I was hired for my language skills, one of which was a language that literally no one in the intelligence community speaks, or spoke, at least at that time, post 9/11. So yeah, it was diversity. I think for good reason.
Which language was it? I'm super curious. Is it Urdu? What is it?
It's called Kannada. It's spoken in the state of Karnataka in India by about 60 million people.
Wow.
And I'm fluent. I mean, that was actually my first language. That's what my parents spoke. They pretended that they couldn't speak English, so that's the language that I spoke first. I didn't speak English until I was like 4 or 5 years old. But when I was going through the process for the FBI, they have people who test you so that you get a score of your proficiency. So I got tested for Spanish, and then I gave them this language, and they didn't have anyone. And actually, it was a language that they did, like, in other words, I can't say too much, but there were things that, they realized that they needed a speaker for this, that, would be helpful for them. They were hiring speakers of all kinds of languages after 9/11. So, yeah.
It's interesting, by the way. That's an interesting example of where diversity actually could be a real strength. And
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the same way in the law enforcement side of the FBI as well. I mean, a huge issue all the time when I would send out FBI agents is they would often stick out like a sore thumb in neighborhoods in Chicago.
I tell, students when I talk to groups all the time, especially like when it's, students of color or women, because I didn't quote unquote look like an FBI agent, I got to do some really cool stuff. I got to be in some really fun operations, because I could walk around, nobody thinks I'm an FBI agent.
Yeah, it's
like, I could be eyes and ears in a way that, like, the tall 6-foot former Marine with a crew cut in a black suit cannot. And that's actually a benefit for our national security.
Yeah. It's interesting that people don't think of it that way. It's just funny because that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just so misguided of a perspective. But don't you feel like it's got to be the people who just spend all their time watching right-wing media all the time that this stuff appeals to? I mean, does the average person who like just takes their kids to soccer games and, and watches whatever, on television? I mean,
no. And DEI is really all relative, by the way, because at this point, like, Kamala's running mate is going to be a DEI hire.
That's true.
Let's be honest. Like, it's going to be somebody who fits a particular kind of profile to balance the ticket.
Is that code for white dude?
It's going to be a white dude. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, you know that. I know that. Yeah.
So who do we think it's going to be?
I don't know who it's going to be. I mean, my gut I like Mark Kelly.
Okay.
I just love I like the military. Like, I mean, to me, he just screams like, you know, to anyone who might be waffling for any kind of implicit bias, like he's the guy.
Okay.
For you. If you need like help. And he's got the astronaut and he's a Navy vet and, you know, I mean, political experience. And I think I would just love to see him in a split screen with JD Vance.
Yeah, that would be something. I'll throw out another name that I think we should also be strongly considered is Josh Shapiro, because we need to win in Pennsylvania, right? So
more like Democrats seem to be on board with Shapiro. Then I think like the independents and stuff.
I mean, look, for me, it's just math, like, right.
Yeah, I don't know. I do not I don't run the numbers, but I mean, I think what's cool though is that there does seem to be such a deep bench, and it wasn't that long ago where people were like, why can't the Democrats come up with any good candidate? You know, like it felt so scarce or something. And I think it's nice. It's hopeful and it feels empowering.
Yeah, I mean, and people in my state, I'm in Illinois, are like freaking out that we might lose JB Pritzker because he's improved our bond rating like 9 times or so. So like people are pretty happy with him on both sides of the alley. He's got a pretty consensus, love from both sides of the alley, I think, here for the most part. So, yeah, but I mean, I don't think he'll get chosen because the Democrats are going to win Illinois no matter what. Whereas these other states, it's more up in the air. But there's a lot of great candidates out there.
We'll see.
So, Asha, I cannot let this episode go by without asking you some questions about JD Vance and his wife, because you know these people.
I don't know them.
You're a but-for cause. Like if we went back in time and executed baby Asha, maybe JD Vance and Usha Vance would be nowhere on the political scene. You changed American history, Asha. What were you doing?
Well, you're doing like a killing Hitler thing?
Yeah, if we just killed baby Asha, none of this would have happened. It's all your fault.
Okay, I mean, I don't know these people.
What?
No, I don't. I mean,
you changed the course of their lives, Asha.
I know. And look, honestly, I'll be completely. Well, when I was at the law school and JD Vance was a student, I really didn't know Usha at all. He seemed like a really.
Didn't you admit both of them, Asha?
I can neither confirm nor deny that, but I will say, like, you know, I think JD Vance was like a nice guy, like a nice student, polite, soft-spoken. I don't know. I worked with like the vets group and stuff, you know, for recruiting and things like that. And, you know, they're always like a great group to work with. That was like my only impression. So, you know, I don't really have a huge reference point except that it feels different. And by the way, and then after he graduated, I read Hillbilly Elegy in 2015, maybe early 2016, whenever it came out. I thought it was a really thoughtful book. Like, I liked it. Like, I was like, oh, this is really a great memoir to, like, get a perspective that I would not. I mean, it was very DEI. You know what I'm saying? It was like, this is something that is adding to my understanding of other people's experience of the world. So I don't know what to make of the transformation. I really don't.
I was just say that JD Vance got to where he was in part by being sort of this, you know, person who is appealing to folks on the left in many ways, saying like, hey, you don't understand middle America and why they're so enamored with Trump and people and all sorts of other things. So I'm going to explain it to you by explaining my life story. That was essentially his deal. And he was originally kind of an anti-Trumper. And then he had this big transformation for whatever reason.
Well, and not only an anti-Trumper, but he was actually quite insightful in understanding why Trump appealed to these people. right? Like he was like, he taps into these innate grievances. He's like, the strongman thing is like an opioid for that. Like, I mean, he was like using his insight into the psychology of these people to understand exactly why a demagogue would have so much power and how a demagogue could exploit the experience of these people in order to get their support. And so there's something to me that is almost more pernicious about somebody who, you know, Trump to me, I don't want to dismiss him as being dumb. Like, you know, I think he's very savvy in a lot of ways, but he's simple in a way, right? Like he kind of does what benefits him in this kind of very transactional, like narcissistic way. There's something more calculating to me about Vance. And he used this understanding that he saw and that at some point he knew at some moral level was like sort of exploitative. And then he got on board to exploit it himself. Like that to me is like weird.
Yeah, potentially dangerous. I mean, look, I'm not a psychoanalyst, but it's potentially dangerous.
Well, if we're talking about politics, I'm going to do armchair psychology, like armchair psychology.
Let's do some more armchair psychology. Because of you, he met Usha.
Uh-huh.
And what do we make of poor Usha, who by all accounts appears to be a brilliant woman, very accomplished lawyer, not super right wing. And yet here she is, like standing on stage at the Republican convention saying stuff. What do you make of her?
Yeah, it's like the tale of two Indians right now. Like, because, you know, Kamala, I know, like, you know, I think she identifies, I don't know how she identifies. I mean, I know that we refer to her as Black, but she's half Indian. Her mother was an Indian immigrant, and the Indian community also kind of claims her, I think. And then you have Usha, and then, of course, poor Nikki is, like, off on the sideline. So, yeah.
And then you. Okay.
And then me. But, so Usha, like, I mean, to me, I am really curious because, look, I'm not going to lie. A lot of my people have gone to the dark side, right? Like Kash Patel. And I mean, if you just look at the first Trump administration, like Raj Shah was like one of the press secretaries, and Vivek Ramaswamy, who, you know, ran for president, and who else? Seema Verma was, I think, the commerce secretary or something. Ajit Pai was the FCC. But a lot of my people are over there. Okay. So there's nothing inherently, Nikki, of course, though I don't know that Nikki actually considered herself Indian until like 4 years ago. You know, there's nothing I think that keeps someone who is Indian American from going over. But yeah, I agree with you that there is, my gut is that this is more, I wouldn't call it problematic, but it's like she's not fully on the train, or maybe this wasn't necessarily her idea. That's kind of the impression I get.
I think she gives that impression. Even at the convention, the things that she said were measured. Okay. I don't think she mentioned Trump's name once, if I recall correctly. She's very measured in what she had to say. And my sense is, I mean, she was potentially a fairly apolitical lawyer. Like I said, very accomplished lawyer. She was a partner at a big and very, you know, well-regarded law firm. She had been a Supreme Court clerk.
Two conservative judges.
Without a doubt.
Kavanaugh and then Roberts.
Kavanaugh and Roberts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless was sort of somebody who was not out there being very political. And, you know, she is now a political figure, for better or worse, right? She's essentially running to be second lady. She left her law firm job. It's a big transition. I feel for her because she's an accomplished person who had a big career. She's married to JD Vance. She has kids, and it's a lot to give up your career and choose. This is not her choice necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying that she obviously has agency. She's making a decision to stand with her husband here, but when whether you're first lady, second lady, first husband, second husband, whatever, you're kind of along for the ride in a certain respect.
Well,
right?
and then you are definitely a target. And I think for that reason, I think it's notable that she, not only when she spoke at the Republican National Convention, she made it a point to highlight things that are, I would call triggers for that crowd. I mean, she's speaking to a group that are holding signs that say mass deportations, and talks about being the child of immigrants, and she was telling some personal stories about how her husband learned to cook Indian food with her mom, and that this was the big one, that he accommodates her vegetarian diet. I'm vegetarian, so I mean, I get it. People who dated me also have to accommodate my vegetarian diet. I don't make them become vegetarian, but it was just, that was a detail that seemed conscious, intentional. Because you don't have to mention that. You don't have to mention that, right? And it's just something that is so, I mean, I'm thinking back to 5 years ago. I remember when Liz Cheney, who I know is now, on the side of, democracy and freedom. But I remember her having a tweet where she was eating a big hunk of steak and talking about how nobody's going to take away our meat. So this is a very meat and potatoes crowd.
I agree with all of that. I mean, I think she, part of that's what I was going to say. I don't know how much of this is her versus how much of it is, people behind, political people behind the scenes saying, actually, we need to appeal to swing state voters and they're going to like your whatever, we need to humanize JD Vance. I don't know, but I will just say that it's interesting. I was curious what your reaction was. I mean, there was I think a thing today where it's look, I love my wife, but she's not white or something like that. I mean, it's an interesting thing. You have some people who are a ticket that's playing towards certain racial politics, and she is not white, and you've had to deal with a lot being an Indian woman in the United States. She's in the crosshairs, and like I said, I don't think it's 100%. Well, it wasn't her life dream to be on a national ticket necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, at least it does not seem as such. I mean, I don't want to paint her as some kind of victim who has no choice without really knowing. I mean, for all we know, she could be a complete enabler who's get on board, JD. I mean, who knows? We just don't know.
I don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know either. But it's interesting. She had to make a big choice to change in her life.
Yeah, right? It is. And I think for me, I mean, he was, I guess, conservative when she married him. So it shouldn't be too much of a, it wasn't necessarily that big of a leap. They couldn't have anticipated Trump, but she knew that he hewed conservative when she married him. And I guess she's okay with that to some degree because she clerked for these judges. The question is, is at some point there a tension between her sense of self and her values and priorities and where this is taking her?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for me personally, I think it would be hard if I had a spouse who radically changed their political beliefs. And I think that's something that anyone would have to grapple with. I don't know how she feels about it, one way or the other. But I think for a spouse in politics, there's definitely got to be an element where you're a public figure, you're highly criticized, and it's a lot to put yourself through. So it's quite a sacrifice on her part in many ways.
So before we go, Renato, you're in dance practice now.
I am. Whenever I am so I'm working a lot, and my dance partner isn't always available, but we're cramming in sessions whenever we can.
So this is Dancing with the Stars Chicago.
Yeah, Dancing with the we're not even like, it's not even E-list stars. Okay. This is like ZZ list stars. Okay. This is like dancing with the extremely local celebrities in your area. You know what I mean? This is like, if whatever, Toledo's got Dancing with the Toledo celebrities. This is like dancing with the suburban, Chicago celebrities. But yes, so people who they think people will want to see make a fool out of themselves dancing, they put in this thing, and we compete to see who wins the Muir Ball trophy, and we're paired up with pros, and we'll see. I mean, it's going to be interesting. My wife is more excited about it than I am. Maybe because she's going to get a kick out of the whole.
That's really funny. So you've been assigned a partner, and you have like an instructor who's teaching you a routine.
Yeah. So she is like, you know how it is on the show? You watch the show Dancing with the Stars?
Yeah, I used to watch it.
Yeah. So like they totally know their thing. I mean, it's like a weird thing, particularly like I'm technically in dance, right? You're supposed to be like leading as a guy, right? I guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, she's like a professional dancer, and I'm just some dude who practices law all the time. So like I'm showing up, she's telling me exactly what to do. We're doing this like a swing thing, and it's like pretty high tempo, and she's like, it's more lively and fun than doing like a tango or waltz.
Yeah.
Like,
no, tango's hard. Yeah.
Boring. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, but it's a lot to learn. It's fun though. I mean, for me, I thought it would be like a fun challenge and a physical fitness thing. I've been working out a lot, and I thought, okay, this will be a test to see how agile I am, and it'll give me additional workout stuff, but it's hard. It's not easy.
So yeah, I'm jealous.
Okay.
Because like one of my dreams is to be on Dancing with the Stars.
Well, if you move to, suburban Illinois, I know some people. I'm going to totally get you into this competition. I will cheer you on. I think I can be your professional partner.
So, cause I danced through high school and college. I did tap and jazz and ballet. I was a cheerleader. Yeah. I went to college. I was a dancer in theater. And so I feel like I can do it. I can do the challenging dances. I could do the tango.
Yeah, you could. I don't know if I could do that, but I will say my dance partner said that she's really impressed that I smile. Apparently guys, when they dance, do not smile. Oh no, they get
like, they're very like concentrated look. You know what you should watch, which is hilarious? Tucker Carlson was on the very, very first season of Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, no kidding.
It's so bad. It's so cringy and so bad. You have to watch it, and you'll instantly feel better about yourself, because half of the dance is him sitting in a chair with the the partner just dancing. Yes. And so you should watch it and know that you will always be better than that.
Okay, we're setting a low bar. I'll take it.
MSW Media.